Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel for this new automotive news review. We're in mid February 2026, and today I'm bringing you a deep dive into two major stories shaking up the car world right now. First, let's talk about a number that's been all over the place lately $11 billion in losses in a single quarter. That's the figure Ford announced on February 10th. Yes, 11 billion. So, are we witnessing the fall of an automotive giant? Or is it a lot more complex than it looks? That's what we're going to unpack together. For the second topic in this video, we're going to cover a historic event. Ferrari is launching their first 100% electric car in 2026. Yes, Ferrari, the brand of V8s, V12s, and pure refinement. And this electric Ferrari now has an official name, Luce, which means light in Italian. A symbolic name that's meant to represent a new era for the brand. Two stories that show just how decisive 2026 is going to be for the automotive industry between strategic challenges and forced adaptation to electric at all costs. If you enjoy this kind of content and want to keep up with more analyses like this one, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell. It really helps me a ton for future videos. Thanks in advance. All right, let's begin with the $11 billion question. First, let's put things in context. Ford isn't some fragile little company. It's over 120 years of history. It's one of the symbols of modern industrialization. Millions of vehicles sold every year. And above all, it's a group that still generates hundreds of billions in revenue. $187.3 billion in 2025 to be exact, making it the most successful year in Ford's history. So, first key point, we're not talking about a company on the verge of bankruptcy. But then why this gigantic loss? $11 billion, that number is scary, but it's misleading because the 11 billion in losses announced doesn't mean Ford burned through 11 billion in cash in 3 months. A huge chunk of that figure comes from strategic decisions tied to electric vehicles. Basically, Ford poured massive investments into catching up with Tesla and the Chinese makers over the past few years. They launched electric models, built battery factories, transformed production lines, but the market didn't grow as fast as expected. Result, some projects are being scaled back, delayed, or even cancelled. And when a company cancels a project or marks down its value, the loss has to be recorded right away, even if the spending happened years earlier. That's what creates this massive headline number. So, yes, the loss is real, but it's largely accounting and strategic. The real issue, electric still isn't making money, not yet. What's interesting is when you look at Ford's electric division, right now it loses several billion a year. Why? Because building electric cars is still extremely expensive. Batteries are pricey, industrial investments are huge, competition is fierce, and demand is slowing down. A lot of consumers still find electric vehicles too expensive. High interest rates in the US market and instability in Europe have slowed purchases, and some buyers now prefer hybrids, which feel safer. Especially when you look at the used market and how electric vehicles lose value much faster than gas or hybrid ones. So Ford is in a tricky spot. They have to invest massively to avoid missing the electric shift. But that investment isn't paying off yet. But not everything is bad at Ford. It's really important to point that out. Ford's traditional operations are still solid. Gas powered pickups, especially the F 150, are selling incredibly well. Professional utility vehicles generate a lot of cash, and those profitable lines are exactly what funds the electric transition and lets Ford announce that record revenue last year. So we have a company running at two speeds. On one side, historic models that bring in money, and on the other, electric that costs a fortune but represents the future. It's a transition period, and industrial transitions never happen without pain. The global context makes everything harder too. You have to look at what's going on around it. Chinese competition is rising fast, with makers able to produce electric vehicles much cheaper. Tesla remains extremely aggressive on pricing and still benefits from its head start in the field. Trade tensions and tariffs are increasing costs, and supply chains remain fragile. In short, Ford isn't going through this storm alone. The entire global auto industry is in full transformation. Surprising fact, Wall Street didn't panic, but why? Because investors know a big part of the loss is one time. Ford keeps generating strong revenue and is adjusting its strategy instead of falling behind the competition. Ford even announced they're slowing down some overly ambitious electric projects, focusing more on hybrids and working on more affordable electric models. In other words, they're adapting their plan to market reality. What's happening at Ford is a clear sign of a bigger phenomenon. The shift to electric isn't a smooth ride. We were sold or even forced on a fast and obvious transformation, but reality is way more complex. It's expensive, it's risky, and demand is weak right now. Legacy car makers have to manage two worlds at once: keep selling profitable gas cars while pouring huge money into electric, And that inevitably creates financial tension. But should we be worried? In the short term, Ford is clearly going through a challenging period, but we're not talking about collapse, we're talking about a company in mutation. The real question isn't, will Ford survive? The real question is, will Ford manage to make its electric business profitable before the competition gets too far ahead? Because in 10 years, the automotive landscape will look very different. Less gas, more electric, more tech, and only the makers that adapt smartly will come out on top. When you compare Ford to its competitors, it's clear the company isn't alone. GM and Stellantis have also struggled with the economics of electric vehicles. Tesla remains further ahead in EV development, but it has benefited significantly from government incentives and scale advantages. Meanwhile, Chinese manufacturers like BYD dominate the affordable EV segment, increasing competitive pressure and forcing Ford to adapt. In summary, Ford announces 11 billion in losses. Impressive. But it's not a total crash. It's the price of a massive industrial transformation, a transformation that all major car makers are going through with difficulty and varying success right now, plus very fierce Chinese competition. And what's at stake today goes way beyond Ford. It's the future of the global auto industry. For the second topic in this video, we're going to talk about the new Ferrari that's being revealed in images and now has a name, the Luce. And sacrilege, this will be Ferrari's first 100% electric car. So, an electric Ferrari, yes, but still extreme. Let's start with the numbers. And Ferrari doesn't do things halfway. The Luce will pack 4 electric motors, one per wheel. The result? Over 1000 horsepower, 0 to 100 in 2.5 seconds, and a top speed of 310 kilometers per hour. So, yes, even without a combustion engine, we're still in Ferrari territory. It sits on a brand new dedicated electric platform. The battery is 122 kilowatt hours, which is huge for an announced range of 530 kilometers in WLTP cycle. Careful though, in the revealed images, we see about 400 kilometers of range with the battery at 3 quarters. So in real life, it probably won't be a world record. But let's be honest, Ferrari buyers don't buy a car to optimize range per kilometer. They buy an experience. For the interior, where everyone expected an ultra futuristic cockpit like a spaceship, Ferrari went completely the opposite way. The Luce interior is heavily inspired by Ferraris from the 1950s and 60s. Yes, retro. The three-spoke steering wheel pays homage to the old wooden Nardi wheels. Except here, it's made from 100% recycled aluminum. And an interesting detail, it's 400 grams lighter than a current Ferrari steering wheel. This shows one key thing. Ferrari is hunting weight everywhere. Light is right, because electric means heavy battery. Everything is controlled from the steering wheel, and that's where it gets special. No more classic stalks behind the steering wheel. Turn signals on the steering wheel, wipers on the steering wheel, drive modes on the steering wheel, electric adjustments still on the steering wheel, a bit like in Formula One. It can surprise people. Some will love it, others will hate it, but Ferrari owns it. Another standout detail, the instrument cluster is fully digital, but it's designed to mimic classic analog gauges. Ferrari blends modern technology with traditional styling. It's a bit paradoxical. A 100% electric car that visually looks back to the past. Why? Probably to reassure the purists, because converting a clientele used to the roar of a V12, well, good luck. An important detail. The interface design was developed in collaboration with Love from Studio, founded by Sir Jony Ive, Apple's historic designer, the guy who designed the iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch. And you can feel it. The interior is clean, minimalist, and very visually polished. It's an astonishing mix. Italian tradition plus Apple design. The central screen can pivot toward the driver or passenger. It has a palm rest to avoid taking eyes off the road, and above all, it integrates what Ferrari calls a multigraph, an ultra detailed digital watch with 3 independent motors that can display clock, chronograph, compass, and launch control. We're clearly in obsessive detail territory. Another surprise, the Luce won't be a strict two-seater. It's a large GT with 4 seats. Rear passengers get their own screen and climate controls. We're closer to an electric Ferrari puro sangue than a radical little Berlinette. What's also interesting is the communication strategy. Ferrari is multiplying teasers, which is pretty rare for them. Usually their new cars are already sold before they're even shown, but here, the stakes are huge. Get people to accept a Ferrari without a combustion engine. The Luce is an extreme power revolution, technologically modern with modern Apple style design, but at the same time, it keeps a retro steering wheel, graphics inspired by the 1950s, with references to old Veglia and Jaeger dials. Ferrari isn't cutting ties with its past, it's trying to build a bridge, or like Ford with its Mustang, ride on people's nostalgia to sell an ideology, even if it means breaking a myth. Now, the real questions: will purists accept a silent Ferrari? Can the emotion of a V12 be replaced by brutal electric acceleration? Can Ferrari stay Ferrari without a combustion engine? The full presentation is scheduled for May 2026. We don't know the final exterior design yet, but one thing is sure: this is probably one of the most important launches in modern Ferrari history. We're coming to the end of this video. If you enjoyed the content and want to support the channel, a like would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching all the way through. See you soon for more analyses.